So like all my other recent rank 5s, I took Ebony Maw up for Alliance War defense, although he's also pretty decent on attack, I must say. And he can be quite fun to play. I actually genuinely enjoy using him, especially for those ideal matchups. And how I use them is pretty straightforward. The basic TLDR is you ideally want to throw your special 2 as soon as the falter triggers, because each hit of the special 2 will place a passive degen, and while the opponent is faltered, it will place an additional 2 degens for each hit. And the last hit will also refresh any active falter. Not really important for damage, but it is just nice to have more uptime on the falter. So that's probably the most important thing to know for damage. And then in terms of utility, the special 1 can be used to nullify, although it's not the greatest because it only does fury, precision and cruelty buffs until you activate Black Tongue, which happens when you get 100 charges, which takes a bit of time, you have to trigger falter like 5 times. So if there's nothing to nullify, I'll usually only use a special 1 when I actually want to ramp him up, because Maw is a ramp up character. He has persistent charges, and basically what that does is increase his degen duration by 10% per charge up to a max of 4 charges. So it's not a huge difference at first, but once he is fully ramped up it does become quite noticeable. A rank 4 Ebony Maw can do about 40,500 degen damage from one special 2 if everything is timed right. So each charge is basically an extra 4,050 degen damage from one special 2. So obviously if it's stuff like Battlegrounds where you're just using him for one fight, you wouldn't want to ramp him up because it might make the fight take longer. But if you're questing using him for multiple fights, it might make sense to do so. So you need to do 3 things to gain a persistent charge: nullify a buff, which you do with the special 1, inflict a power steal, which you do with the heavy attack, and cause the opponent to miss, which is what the falter is for. And when you complete a mission, which you can only do once per fight unfortunately, you will place a pretty strong degen on the opponent, and that is kind of why I like to use the heavy attack at least once per fight, if it's not a power gain matchup, because the heavy attack can also steal power gain buffs, which can be very useful and somewhat cheesy against champs like Hyperion and Vision Arcus. It's also just fun to use, especially while they faltered, and if they do have a lot of power, it actually gives you back a decent amount. And then there's the special 3, which I hardly ever use. It's more just for more power control than damage really. It just steals all the opponent's power and gives you a power gain buff. So it's generally just special 2 ideally while they faltered, and I don't always get the full special 2 in before the falter expires. Just depends on the matchup and AI, if not my timing, but I usually get at least most of it. And that is pretty much Ebony Maw in a nutshell, and everything I've mentioned so far is without him being awakened. So he does not need it, but if he does have it, then whenever the opponent misses, you will inflict a degen passive dealing 585 to 1,397 damage over 1 second. And when the opponent is faltered, their auto block ability accuracy is reduced by 100%, and Ebony Maw gains 9.76 to 40% ability power rate based on SIG level. So it is nice to have. I mean, the degen makes him a slightly better defender and gives you a bit more damage, and the auto block ability reduction can actually be useful for those auto blockers like Darkhawk, but it's not essential for him to be useful. Still gonna be generally annoying to fight against, especially because of how almost all his hits don't make contact, so you can't always parry stun him, which offensively has also become quite useful. Like against Atuma, he actually works relatively well because he just doesn't take as much thorns damage as most champs. And with the new scoring system, that would actually make him one of the better counters for Atuma, who is one of the best defenders right now. And speaking of which, I'm sure Ebony Maw will be in Gladiator Circuit weeks 3 and 4 of season 10, because he does cause all guaranteed crits to miss against non-science champs. So we'll see, might not be that bad. I mean, it's not hard to counter him, but if you don't have a counter, he can be hard. So most of his value does come from defense, but he can still be very capable as an attacker. I have won a couple of Battleground rounds with him on attack, but my Maw is pretty stacked, which obviously helps. I have been using rank 4 numbers throughout this video, but I am showcasing a rank 5 since I can't exactly rank him down. In fact, he was actually the only champ that I took from rank 3 to rank 5. All my other rank 5s were rank 4 for at least a few months, and I do have a rank 3 5-star Ghost Rider Relic attached to him, which doesn't actually do a whole lot in terms of damage, although every little bit helps. Main thing is getting an extra 4.26% degen vulnerability from the striker for 12 seconds, and then the rune I have selected allows the degen vulnerability to also inflict a vicious passive, which increases potency of degen by 3.27%. And then the attribute slot I have increases direct damage potency by 2.18%. And that's the only thing that's not based on the striker, so I am getting a bit more damage here and there, but it's only noticeable after using the striker and not by a whole lot. If the relic was awakened, then maybe it'll be a different story, because then I'll get more degen potency and vulnerability on top of that, plus the ability to place a stagger debuff for 8 seconds. So yeah, I would love to awaken this relic. Would also go very nicely with my rank 5 Mojo or my rank 1 Purgatory. Yeah, she needs more than just a relic to make her a bit more useful. And then there's Kindred, who also has some degen effects. Although he's not really an attacker, and I don't know if this relic will make him one. The numbers just aren't quite there, but I guess for those ideal matchups he might work well enough. And he's still pretty new, could still get rebalanced. Or maybe I'm speaking too soon, because I haven't really looked into him that much. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this one. I hope you found it interesting, and as always, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.